Hey guys, welcome back to the MCU HQ, and this is going to be a full spoiler review of WandaVision as a whole. I will be talking about heavy spoilers for the whole show, so don't watch if you have not seen any or all of WandaVision. I have in-depths of each episode, both non-spoiler bits and spoiler, in my WandaVision coverage playlist, so go check that out if you want my thoughts on a certain episode. There's lots of good stuff in there and a lot of theories that ended up being wrong, so go check that out if you're looking for something specific. Now, let's hop into the review of the series. The premise of the show is really interesting. Wanda and Vision are thrown into a sitcom world from the very start without any answers. The show starts out in a recreation of the Dick Van Dyke Show, and this mystery builds and builds. There's all this weird stuff happening, like Wanda giving birth to kids who magically age themselves up to 10. And I do want to give a rundown of every episode individually with just a quick review on each episode. So let's just do that now. Just start with that. I have said before that the first episode of the show does not need to be in the show. It does not push the story forward at all. And I think it was pointless to waste an episode of a limited series on an episode that has no relevance to the rest of the show. It's the only thing that never really came back into play, and they should have cut it. Nothing in that episode ended up really being necessary except for the fact that Wanda and Vision officially get married. It was still an entertaining episode though, as they all are. There's not an episode of this show that's not good. But I just don't know why this one needed to be here. Now, episode 2, this is where the show should have started. This is where we get introduced to Monica Rambeau. We get hints that things aren't right. It's the episode that should have kicked off the show along with episode 3, which is when Wanda has her kids. We finally get to see some of Wanda's villainous side when she kicks Monica out of Westview. And this is where she has her kids, and then we see in episode 5 and 6 and throughout the rest of the show. But I was worried when Billy and Tommy came in. For some reason in the back of my mind, I thought they might bring the show down in quality, but actually lifted it up. I loved the two of them so much. And Marvel released the first 2 episodes on the same day. It should have been 2 and 3. They should have just cut 1 altogether, in my opinion. Now, episode 4, this is where we break from the sitcom. We take a step back to see what SWORD has been doing up to this point. And SWORD's kind of a new government organization in the show, led by a guy named Dick Wad Hayward. And I thought this was one of the best episodes. There's people who don't like it because it's a break from the sitcom, but I thought this was really cool. I think the show needed to see the other side of this story. It's just a shame that nothing SWORD did ever ended up mattering, and it introduced Hayward, who is really not a good villain. I'm trying to think of what his motive was. He didn't really have one. But I'm excited to see where the organization goes from here with someone else at the helm, because it feels good to have a government organization in the MCU again that's just behind the scenes helping out. Now, episode 5. This episode is incredible. This is the 80s episode. We get to see Billy and Tommy. Vision gets his own story where he realizes something's wrong with Westview. And it ends with the Quicksilver cliffhanger, which comes right after a very intense argument between Wanda and Vision, a very well-written argument between Wanda and Vision, where Vision kind of starts to break free from Wanda and realize that she needs to be stopped. I personally think this episode's the best of the show. It has, we get a sitcom story, we get SWORD, both plots are interesting, and it's the episode where Wanda threatens Hayward, and we get to see more of her villainous side. There's so much in episode 5. I think it represents all the best aspects of the show. So episode 6 had a lot of momentum going into it, and it was just ramping up. It was Halloween. The episode was actually kind of scary. You would see people frozen in place. Someone was kind of stuck taking down a Halloween decoration. They just kept doing this, and a tear came down their eye. It was awesome. Vision leaves Westview, gets torn apart. It even had the coolest cliffhanger because we could see Wanda expand the hex and just suck in almost everyone. I thought that was great. I didn't think it was as good as episode 5. Again, episode 5 had everything for me, but that's not to say I didn't like episode 6. Again, every episode of the show was good, and I think episode 6 was a really solid episode. It's not as strong as episode 5. That one was fantastic. So the show kept going uphill, but at this point, there was this issue arising because the show kept putting mystery on top of mystery over and over for 7 episodes now. And the amount of questions to the number of answers, there were so many questions, and episode 7 finally promised answers when Agatha finally revealed herself. We got Agatha All Along, which is a great song, but at the end of the day, Agatha did jack shit because episode 8 reveals that it was Wanda the entire time, so not sure why that was in there. And episode 8, easily the most emotional. This was an episode we were supposed to get answers, but we really didn't, because the answers the episode gives aren't the answers it should have given. It gives like a couple big answers that Wanda did not steal Vision's body, like that one. But other than that, it's just flashbacks to before Endgame, like before Wanda even would have had the thought of doing this. You know, we get Wanda's origin with her parents dying, the Hydra experiment, a conversation at the Avengers facility with a line that should be printed on a t-shirt and just quoted everywhere. This line was fantastic.
But what is grief, if not love persevering?
And that shows Hayward was an even worse person than previously thought. But the issue with this episode is that it didn't answer enough questions. So going into the finale, the number of questions you had outnumbered the number of answers, and everyone knew that there's no way the show could answer all of them. And anyone who watched my week-to-week reviews knows that I loved the show until the finale. That is where I felt things crashed a little. I thought the finale was a disappointment. Not to say it was bad, just a disappointment. There were too many loose ends going into the final episode, and it was also a huge shift for the show. You know, most of the show is a sitcom or people on the sword base, but it doesn't feel like your typical MCU thing, because it's not supposed to be, which is why it's kind of upsetting that the final episode is a CGI fight where Wanda and Agatha are throwing lasers at each other, and then 2 Visions shooting lasers at each other. Now, the best part was easily the fact that Vision beats his other self with a philosophical battle. That was awesome. But I also felt that the CGI just wasn't there. The fight with Wanda and Agatha, who, by the way, Catherine Hahn played Agatha brilliantly. That fight was like you kind of see the cracks in the CGI. It kind of felt like they were just up on wires flying around in a green screen room. I mean, maybe it's just me, but I saw it. And Agatha did survive, which means we might get more of her because I actually really did like her character. But again, the better fight is between Vision and Vision because it's different. They fight for a bit, realize it's not going anywhere, and just talk. Then Westview Vision restores White Vision's memories, and he's like, huh, I'm Vision, and he flies off into the MCU, just leaves the show. So I'm guessing he'll come back in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, since Wanda's in that, which means he was just chilling for 8 months while Wanda goes crazy, because yet the post-credit scene shows that Wanda's going to go nuts, so she'll probably fight Doctor Strange. I mean, Wanda Maximoff, one of the best villains in the MCU. Let's not act like she wasn't a villain on this show. She enslaved the entire town to make herself happy, and even though she didn't do it intentionally, she didn't stop it until the very end. And then Monica said, they'll never know what you sacrificed for them. What? And speaking of Wanda, it's worth mentioning that Elizabeth Olsen's performance in this show is phenomenal, and in those last 2 episodes, she was pulling some serious emotion out of people. She won't get an Emmy nomination because awards shows hate comic books, but I honestly think she deserves one. She was great, as was Paul Bettany. The 2 of them are such a great duo, and they have incredible chemistry. And while we're talking about casting, it's worth mentioning Evan Peters. He was cast as Fietro in the show. And as a fan favorite character who was given a huge reveal, you didn't even need to make fan theories to assume that it was Fox Quicksilver crossed over into the MCU. So the reveal that it wasn't Fox Quicksilver and his name was actually Ralph Boner and he was just some random dude was a really bad call. It might be the worst twist in the MCU. Yes, worse than the Mandarin. Them making a random dude Pietro wasn't the issue. The issue was that they specifically cast Evan Peters. It was a really bad call. I don't know why they decided to go that route, and someone should have stepped in because the show will probably be remembered for stuff like that instead of the intensity or emotion like something like episode 5 or 8. I think as the show distanced itself more and more from the sitcom world and got closer to normal MCU stuff, some cracks in the storytelling started to show, which is unfortunate considering that the show was leading to a finale like this from the very beginning. That's not to say the writing was bad. The writing was good throughout the entire show. For example, the ending. The goodbye at the end of the show was a moment of fantastic writing. Wanda got to say goodbye to her children, and then to Vision as she lowered the hex, and I almost cried as Vision faded away in front of her. I love the scene, and it's sticking with me. It was super, and I mean super, well written. And I do want to touch on fan theories, because this is a big talking point right now. I've read nonstop since the finale came out that our own fan theories are the reason we're disappointed in the finale, or one of the reasons, right? But I think that's mostly untrue, and shows that people saying that are making claims without looking at all into why people are upset. When a show builds itself on a complex mystery that warrants fan theories for its entire runtime, then half-asses its ending, of course people are going to be disappointed. When they intentionally leave someone like the aerospace engineer ambiguous and hype him up, I'm going to be interested in who that might be, which would lead to disappointment when it doesn't end up mattering. When the opening credits of the show tease the Wizard and the Grim Reaper, I'm going to be upset when the show never follows through or hints to them ever again throughout its runtime. When a behind-the-scenes video has a character in the back that we haven't seen in the MCU up to this point, we're expecting him to show up. It's almost like the show wanted to be more complex and layered than it was, which is evident in its incredibly simple finale. The things that you would expect to be in the finale is what was in the finale, when it should have gone above and beyond just like the rest of the show was. And the way you end a show is how it's remembered. Take this, for example. And WandaVision ended a very interesting and engaging story with a mediocre episode, and that is unfortunately how the show will be remembered. I know that I'm making it sound like I hate WandaVision, but I don't. I really liked it. I'm excited to rewatch it. I'm excited to see how the story carries on through Spider-Man No Way Home and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Every sitcom era interested me. I love the mystery of the show. I love the character work. The show made Wanda Maximoff and Monica Rambeau two of my favorite characters in the MCU. The show's good. I didn't feel like I wasted my time on it, and I certainly don't think the MCU just had a massive screw-up. It was a solid series. It was a disappointing finale, but that does not mean it's bad. I am going to give WandaVision as a whole a B+. I am eager to rewatch this series as a whole instead of weekly and see how that changes my opinion, knowing how it ends and how things wrap up. Well guys, there you have it. That is my review for the full WandaVision series. What were your thoughts on the series as a whole? What were your thoughts on my review? Let me know all that down in the comments below. Also, leave a like on this video, subscribe, click on the bell icon to receive all notifications from the MCU HQ. That's going to be it. Have a great day, guys.